Greetings, Nilash.
Hi, Francesco. Thanks
Dr.
for taking.
Ramnarine, to be
Yes.
formal. And I am happy that you're coming in from Trinidad and Tobago. And
Mhm.
I am here in Wuji Mountain on top of North Carolina.
Mhm.
And we wanted to have a conversation today about what we're going to be offering in Trinidad this February. So what does it look like? I mean,
Yeah.
we've got a great community there who have been
Mhm.
taking your Qigong classes, who've been taking my Qigong classes, who've been teaching Qigong. We have a fair amount of certified teachers in the organ cleansing Qigong there. So I'm very proud of what's been happening in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
So why did we decide to do this one?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Francesco, I just want to say thank you for coming to Trinidad, and thank you for feeling the energy that we have here, and also for appreciating that we're ready for Qigong in Trinidad. Because I've always had a love for Qigong, and it has been part of my personal practice. And you've helped me so much in terms of taking that into being able to teach and being able to inspire others. I've learned so much. And our course in February this year, 2024, was such a success. Your visit was such a success. I have many inspired students, and we enjoy your Zoom classes. We enjoyed what you did in February and what's coming up. You did share something though. You said that this EMF course came out of some of the interactions that you had when you came here in February. There were a lot of things gestating at that time, and I'm intrigued. I want to find out more about that. What are your thoughts on that? How this EMF course come out of that experience?
Well, first of all, I have to say I'm so proud and honored to be coming to Trinidad again.
Mhm.
Why? Not only because you and your dad and your family have an amazing clinic, the Ishtara Clinic is epic. And to me, it is so far beyond what's even available in the United States right now. And people don't realize that. They think here's an island out in the Caribbean sandwiched to the Atlantic. What could be going on there? And in fact, what you have, and I could tell from the client base there, a very healthy group of people who integrate movement and sound and high technology, energy, philosophy in with the traditional healing and herbal medicine and Qigong. So for me, what is happening at Ishtara in Trinidad is really the future of medicine. And I will feature it in my upcoming program, but that's what inspired me. Not only you coming to Colorado as you did to come get your first certification with Qigong, and now you're certified with the National Qigong Association. So I'm very honored with that, and many other people are. But what I noticed when we had our class in Tobago, we had a 5-day training, fabulous people, a very good group of people who were knowledgeable and went on that deep dive. But what I found was that people were very interested in the emotional transformation aspects that I offer, even though that wasn't a key part of the organ cleansing Zhangfu Gong Qigong training. I do touch on these things because I feel it's very important. So people know that Qigong isn't just about moving and flailing your arms around and breathing. It's all beautiful. That's great work, but that's only the start of a personal transformation, right? And so for people like yourself, like me, who don't want to just stop at saying, oh, I feel good with Qigong, my body is healthier now, I can stop. Or I'll stay at my practice at this level because I feel good and healthy. But the fact is, there is emotional components, energetic components in our life that don't fully get addressed if we don't talk about it. If we don't understand the principles that are underlying the movements of Qigong, the energy transformation work of Qigong, the Qi activation of Qigong movement. And that's what I found so interesting in our group in Trinidad, is that people ask me these questions. When I brought it up, most people simply just give it a nod when I talk about emotion alchemy or the three minds or the idea of the third field. These concepts, typically people just nod and are interested. But what I found when we were on Tobago, where we had a wonderful group there, Nilash, people were asking deep questions, and we didn't have enough time allocated to go into these areas that are tools for working with our emotions. And again, this isn't just therapy nods to emotion. This is the idea of how do I use Qigong energy principles and then transform those emotions. So now I have a tool set that when I hit my edge, when I find one of those 5 emotions, anger, fear, grief, when these emotions come up, I know what to do with them now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And didn't you find during that workshop that people were interested in wanting a real life application of these ideas?
We couldn't get enough of that. That was very palpable. Some of the sessions that we had when you touched on emotional alchemy. I mean, personally for me, I felt that, Qigong is its own teacher because it takes you on this journey. I think you mentioned in your book, The Qi Effect, that Qi is a carrier wave for information that's coming in from a multidimensional space. And Qigong has instructed me how to deal with emotions up to a certain point, meaning that, how do we acknowledge, how do we create space, how do we give presence to things like anger and fear and grief and so on. And then when you started talking about that you could then transform these things using principles of Qigong into something positive, that got really exciting because, all of us have tried in the past to suppress, okay, that doesn't work, cut, try and disconnect, push it away. And you realize that that's not working, that's not doing anything. And so there must be something else. And the icing on the cake when we all heard it in Tobago was that you can actually take these negative emotions and transform it. And that got us really excited. I know everybody was excited about that.
Beautiful. Well, that's the key. I mean, we can live in a world of managing our lives, managing our emotions, managing our thoughts. That only goes so far. But for certain people, I get it. That is as far as they can go. But the people that you and I want to talk to, the people that we're opening our hearts to, are the ones who say, that's not enough for me. I'm not going to just suppress my anger and have it pop up again. I'm not going to just work with this grief so I don't feel grieving, but then I know it's still bubbling there and it comes back up again. When we learn some really simple but straightforward techniques that are tried and true now, a lot of people have been experiencing these, you have a strategy and a step that you take when those emotions come up, when you're dealing with an energetic issue. A lot of people understand that there's some very complex, I don't want to call them negative, but these are intrusive energies in the world right now. They can happen between 2 people. They can be happening between a lot of people and another person or groups of people. We're in a world right now. Look what's happening in Europe. Look what's happening in the Mideast. These are energetic field disturbances that the average person is trying to manage. And the sensitive people are getting very, how should I say, misaligned by them. And if we don't work on realigning them and tapping into those emotions that carry amazing power for our healing and for our next step, we're never going to make it to the next step, Nilash. We're going to have a lot of people who haven't prepared enough for what's coming in the world. I hate to say it. I mean, I'm not a doomsayer, but we can see the writing on the wall. We're living in very challenging times.
Yeah. And that's actually what that's what got my attention to come out to you in Colorado, because I followed your newsletter for years, never met you, never spoken to you. But then there was this Wuji Hundun, which is emptiness and chaos. And we all kind of know that we're living in chaotic times. And I just, that just the fact that there was Qigong to be able to help you to negotiate with that type of energy. I was like, okay, I'm jumping on a plane, I'm coming out there.
Yes.
And it was transformative. I utilize those principles every single day, because we are in turbulent energetic space. We know that. Is it possible to navigate that? Absolutely. I found that in my own life. I certainly have.
Yeah. And the key is to say, these are not just clever ideas. They're not just ways to circumvent feeling bad or feeling sad. feeling angry. These are ways to say those emotions, we call them yang emotions. We know that they carry something in that yangness, in that high energy flux of these emotions. There is an ability to activate chi. Once we tap that, once we learn how to do it, there's a sequence. Once people get it, it's like so obvious. Once you get it, you can start to realize that you get more energy instead of being drained by emotions.
Yeah.
That only happens because we haven't understood that they are carrier waves for energy that once we tap into, we can use that. And that's what healing is, right? I mean, healing isn't just about cleaning up scar tissue and tumors, and it's all great. I mean, being able to have a high vibe immune system, I never get sick. I mean, it doesn't happen. I know how to work with my body and my energy, but that's not the end. That's just a midpoint. That's a point to say, I can affect energetically my body, mind, and spirit. I can activate chi. I don't work with chi. I don't move chi around. When people understand about the activating chi part, everything changes. And I think that's the beauty of knowing Qigong at a deep level. And when we talk about the Wuji Hundun form, for heaven's sakes, it's an 800-year-old form. So we think we're so modern and so advanced and so smart. Why is it that these people 800 years ago, in the 13th century, would think of what they were dealing with wars back then and fighting in what is now China? This was a complex time for them too. So that's why the Taoists picked these concepts and had some of the very, very ancient concepts and started to apply them to things that the average person can use, which is movement and breath, visualization. And now with the emotion alchemy, the EMF training, which stands for emotion and mind and frequencies. Once we understand how they're all part of the energetic field, now we can work with them. That's what Qigong's about. Qigong is energy work, right? Once we can understand that there is more that sits in the realm of energy than we realize. And once we work with that and become peaceful with that and aligned with it, I think people can tap into their power that they think that sometimes they've lost or they've given away.
And have you ever teach this course before, or there's one that's coming up before Trinidad? Is that right?
I want to practice a little before I come to Trinidad. This will be the one. We have a great group in Florida who have worked really hard, and they have gone through years of training now, so they're prepared. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think that'll make the Trinidad course even better because taking a group through that. But I've never taught the EMF before, and I have taught the emotion alchemy before. The E part, the EMF. So the emotion alchemy part in Poland. And that alone was an amazing experience for people. I did that as a 2-day course just for that component. And the beauty of this EMF course too is that there are breakout sessions. And to me, that's what I found. And I learned in Poland, in Warsaw, we had like 50 people at that workshop, breaking people into groups so people can take these exercises and immediately put it to use. So when you have a safe space with people that you know and trust, you can work through these exercises, and we'll do that for the E and the M and the F. So there are breakout sessions and actual interactive exercises that we do for each of those. So the emotion alchemy has the exercises we'll do as a group, and then in the small interactive groups, breakout groups, everyone will get a chance to really put these into action, go through the steps. Does it make sense? How do I modify it? Have I got it down yet? And that's my real hope, of course, in my heart, is that these are practical things, Nilash. I mean, you can't put them to real life use, and it's just, it's just poetry, And poetry is nice, I see a lot of people practicing Qigong like poetry, and it's beautiful, and they're happy and they talk about fun poetic things, but I see their lives are not as transformed as they would like them to be. And that's where we have to get to. That's what these times are asking of us.
Playfully, you called it EMF. And I know that's a play on EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies. Is there a link there? I mean, these electromagnetic frequencies, they're becoming way more invasive, more bombarding to us. How does Qigong allow us to interact or interface with that and protect ourselves from it? And why did you link those two things?
That's a good question, and only your brilliant mind can play with that. But yeah, I lived in Hawaii for most of my adult life. Okay, that's kind of why I like Trinidad too, because it reminds me of that vibration. But Hawaiians are very clever, and they use these double entendres, and they would say something in a song typically or in a chant that you had to listen to because it wasn't what was obvious. So when people hear EMF, they think, oh my goodness, maybe this is going to be protecting me from electromagnetic frequencies. And in fact, the F part of the EMF training is very much about that. We learn about ourselves as energetic beings and what we can do to protect ourselves from that. But it's important to take a word that has negative connotations, or in this case, a acronym that has negative connotations like EMF, and say, you know what, that's just how I've been conditioned to see those three letters. Suppose I turn it around and say it's an empowering acronym now, that I can own, align, and have massive influence on my E, emotions, M, mind, and F, frequencies. So this is why it's fun to do these kinds of things. I was interviewed by Mike Adams recently, and he said, oh, I like this EMF training. We need to know how to protect ourselves from that. And when I told him what the course really was about, he laughed and he says, excellent. That's what we need to do, is we need to confront these conditioned ways of thinking and understand that we don't have to be victims of them, but we can actually transform our relationship to them. That's what the three minds is about, relationships. So I think anybody who has the courage to go through our 3-day workshop will understand that it's not just about your transforming of emotions, but all of a sudden relationships are looked at deeply, in the M part especially, in the, this is powerful. Because now
that is the relationships part is really interesting, because we did organ cleansing in February, and you touched on those things, and there were certain ways that I looked at relationships after that, just that arose spontaneously, and I started to interact with the third field of certain relationships and saw absolute transformation. Even when I go into situations or settings where I don't know how I'll be received, or haven't seen people in a long time, and I can work on the third field of that situation. And it's just such a more buoyant and joyful human experience that comes out of it. It's affirming, and my appetite is whet to get to get more of that, to see more of that. I love for people in Trinidad to experience more of that.
And where in life do we not have relationship? Right? You're a doctor. Every patient interaction is a relationship. Every person. I might be thought of as a hermit on Wuji Mountain here, but I'm in constant relationship with, whether it's like this on video interactions, or I have to have interactions with suppliers as we're building this retreat center, but also with nature around me. My relationship with the world I experience. This is a big thing we forget about. So once we start putting more attention, gentle heart, resonant attention on relationship, all of a sudden the EMF practice now has some real practical applications, because some people don't have great relationships in some areas of their life. They might be great in business, but they might suck in their personal, or they may be great in personal, but not good in business. Once we start identifying relationship as an energetic function, now we can influence it in a powerful way.
And what I've learned, and maybe I'll throw it over the question for you, is that isn't that where joy comes from? Isn't that where in the interaction of those relationships and creating heart resonance and creating buoyancy inside of those relationships? I've noticed that joy arises, and if the opposite is also true, that if you don't attend to those things in that way, then there's a vacuum of that, and
Absolutely.
a lot of these negative emotions come up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when we look at heart chi frequency alignment in emotion alchemy, we understand that heart is related to joy, of course, but it's corollary when things are not in alignment is anxiety. Mm-hmm. So when you feel anxious, you're obviously not in your joy. It's a powerful opportunity to tap that anxiety. But the problem is we have a world that's very anxious. And so people aren't in their joy and they wonder why they're not in their joy. And they try to go buy something to make themselves feel better, or they drink alcohol or get stoned or something. And they haven't addressed the transformation of anxiety into joy. And that's why you experience joy as you do. Yes, it can arise spontaneously. But for me, I'm of a place where it's great to have things occur spontaneously, but you don't always have the sequential steps that got you there when you get into a place when maybe you're not as awake or comfortable. And so now that anxiety or that yang emotion can take place, and now you're frozen. Now you don't know how you got to the spontaneous place the other day, but now you're stuck. So I think having a strategy to have some really clear steps that we do in the exercises, people go, oh, wow, I can replicate those steps even in a time of an edge, even in a frustrating moment, a sad moment, a scared moment. You catch yourself, you go through the sequence, which includes some pressure points and other things. So it's not just a head game. It's really a process of transformation. And yes, joy is key. And that's what we need in the world now. If we are in a world of anxiety because of uncertainty, of looming wars, of wondering what's going to happen with the economy, there's a million good reasons to be anxious. Yeah. But if a yang emotion like anxiety has the potential of allowing us to tap something for our betterment, then you get to that place where you think, okay, maybe a bad situation can be turned into a good situation. This is the most practical part of it, right? How to take a challenging moment, a challenging emotion, and turn it into something that is now setting you on a new course.
Yeah. And people definitely need to feel empowered to do that, because you're right. We're beset on all sides, and certainly one of the things that you feel, one thing that comes through quite strongly is, what can I do? I mean, all of these events and these things seem to be happening way outside of our control. There's little that we can do, but such a practice brings it right back to the individual and right back to how you control your energy field, and then how that influences the environment around you.
Absolutely.
And that's how we make our changes.
That's it. And if we don't own that responsibility that we are contributing to the field, right, to this greater energetic field, if we think it's just us going through this problem, or I am so small, I have no influence of it, you're already over. You've already succumbed to being a victim. And this work is about transforming that mentality, because once we understand that we are contributing in a major way to the energetic quantum entanglement, this is not just some scientific thought. This is the real world. And for me, I am so inspired to be teaching these kind of courses, Nilesh, is because I know that we're bringing people together, just like the community you have at Ishtara in Trinidad. That's a powerful force. People have to remember, when they're part of community, when they attend events in person, they're part of a quantum field. They're part of an energetic shift that is better than the sum of the parts. And that's what I pray for. That's why I spend the time I do traveling around, helping groups get together, inspiring teachers. And I look forward to when you can become a facilitator of the EMF training, so we can get more people involved and start to open this circle up and realize we have a lot of influence in this world. We don't have to be victims. We don't have to feel like we're ineffectual. We are powerful. And it's time to remember that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Tell me something about people who want to come to this, but who have not had an experience, a direct experience of Qigong. Many of my students are going to come to it, so they have. But if somebody is listening to this video and they haven't, what should they do as a prerequisite?
Well, only for their benefit. You should have a fundamental understanding, a foundational understanding of Qigong. And that's really to get the lexicon or the language part and to really say, I see what this structure of Qigong is and how it can be the juncture point or the jump point into the EMF training. And that's why we're offering a Qigong fundamentals one-day class before the EMF training at Ishtara, at the beautiful facility there.
Great.
So I think that's important. And I think even if people have practiced Qigong, it's a great class just to go in one full day to just go through the basics and understand. And I think people realize that I teach Qigong a little bit differently. I mean, I might sit on, the NQA, the National Qigong Association board years ago, and I used to be the chairman, and I now also sit on the certification committee. So I'm deeply involved in the tradition of Qigong. But because my teachers were not so traditional, even though they're elder Chinese men and women, they pushed me and they pushed their edge of Qigong to keep it redefined. So I think concepts like emitting Qi and protecting Qi are not in the language that I share, because my teachers were all about a more empowering way to have a relationship with Qi. There's another relationship, life force energy. We have a relationship with it. So our Qigong fundamental course will touch on that concept of Qi activation and some other basic ideas that I think are not so basic to common Qigong practice.
And I've told my students that even though they have experienced Qigong, or they might be beginner or intermediate, that a class with you is always going to introduce a new concept to them. I mean, it's brilliant to have a senior teacher like you come in. In a class like that, I still enjoy so much to get these little tidbits, these little breadcrumbs that we get from you. So that fundamentals course, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and the way I teach is the way, and how could it be different than these elder masters taught me? They were very spontaneous. I didn't go to classes in China. I didn't sit under a structure and have them give me a curriculum. I mean, this was years of hanging out, waiting, listening for the gems, and understanding the chaotic nature of that, which means spontaneous presence. Because when you really teach from your heart, and I know you do this, you allow the group that you're with, the space that you're in, the energy that you're channeling as a conduit to help guide the flow of that. Mm-hmm. And that's what we all do. And I think that's when we come in our joy, when we talk about heart and we come from that heart resonance, that's a very present place. You can't plan too much. You can't structure joy that much, right? The beauty of a child is that they're very spontaneous and they're in that moment. And I think we all are asking to come back to that more childlike self, that spontaneous, intuitive place. And so, yes, I like to try to be that as much as I can. And teaching is one way I express that. And so, yeah, a class will never probably look the same as it did the other day. But that's okay. For people who want structure, they probably shouldn't come to anything I offer, and you'll be safer if you stay away. But if you really, you know what I mean? Really, I don't want to upset people. But if you are tired of structure, if you're tired of the dogma, if you're tired of people telling you what is right and what is wrong, well, then you might like the way I teach, because I like to share that we're all the same. Right? There's no master student in that way. It's about we are all in this journey together, and that we help each other. We create a resonance, a heart resonance in the group when we come together. And that's where everybody benefits from. And so I simply might be the one who's talking, but the class is told and unfolds through the presence of everybody who's there. And we give, and especially in the EMF training, we give a lot of space for everyone to share and to be able to participate. Because I know a lot of people are coming are already teachers. All right. So, and my joy is to share with teachers to help inspire. So we keep spreading the circle wider and wider.
One of the things that I wanted to say, and this is just taking it slightly into a different topic, is that a lot of Qigong that came through before was very kind of lower Dantian centered and very martial artsy. And the Qigong that I've learned from you is very heart centered. And my students notice that. When they come to a class, it's like, this is really quite different. Well, of course, we unravel the structure and we make it much more flowing, and there's a lot of joy. But it's brilliant to see how they react to a class that has a lot of heart presence, and that is definitely one of the things that they'll get from you directly when people come to this class.
I'm honored. We live in a world where the heart has been pushed out of the story. It's been pushed out of the center stage. And this is what happens with conditioning. This is when we live in a world where people want to condition us to be a certain way, well, the first thing you have to do is keep people from being in heart center. And so the sad thing is we start seeing that people are starting to accept that. It becomes a norm to be able to think intellectually or just think about survival and not consider the power of our heart. And we know how good that feels. We know how important it is to activate our intuitive mind. And when we inspire that in ourselves and inspire it in other people, we start to change community. And this is what the promise, I think, is of doing things in a different way. Because the old way, like you said, it was a lower Dantian approach. There was a time when a very survival-oriented approach to these kinds of practices was commonplace. So people were needed grounding. We are more than grounded right now. People are moving back to a materialistic type of view. We have to get out of that. We have to come up and raise the vibration up to heart resonance. And this also means to take it away from the intellectual upper Dantian. So there are reasons why these upper, middle, and lower Dantians are there, both metaphorically and energetically, because they're originators of frequency patterns. Once we start moving into this place, you can feel more grounded. And you can even feel more brilliant in the sense of intellectual brilliance, because you realize that it's this heart center that is actually helping navigate those two in the first place anyway. So it's shifting locus. It's looking at things a little bit differently, and then trusting and putting it into action for yourself and saying, yeah, this feels better. This is how I want to live my life from now on.
So the heart center becomes the maestro of the whole orchestra, really.
Yeah, it really is. That's the way to look at it. And the fact is, it is already. But imagine you have the conductor on stage with the orchestra, but they took the baton out of his hand.
Right.
And now she is standing there and can't do anything, and the band can't hear her, and it's chaos. That's what happens when you take the maestro, the composer, or the conductor out of the story.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. I got that visualization. And also that it's the missing piece of the puzzle, because, we talk about conduit. We talk about creating conduit and how important that is to ourselves and the space around us.
Absolutely.
And, you can stamp on the ground, the earth is always there. You can look up, the heaven's always there. But the heart, sometimes it's not there. And as long as we open it up and it's there, then that conduit between heaven and earth happens.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's energetic physics behind this, not just Qigong woo-woo ideas. There's there's a literal physics on how the world works, Nilash. We know this. You know, you're a scientist and your dad is brilliant this way. We know the science behind this. So when we bring science and spirituality together, now the human conduit can truly actualize, I think, what we're meant to be here. We're not meant here to be here just to survive. We're not meant to be here just to deal with our emotions. We're not meant to be here just to struggle. You know, we're meant to be here to understand what does it mean to go to human 2.0 from a heart place, not from a, you know, what do they call these ideas of changing the human with technology, right? This is not about this. We have the technology. We are the technology, you know? And so once we understand how to tap into that, you know, yes, in some ways we're hacking a system because we have to hack the conditioning that brought us to this place in the first place, this mess.
Yeah.
But it's time. So I think the people who are courageous, who want to play with this, who really believe that they can be more than they think they are, well, this is what it's about. We all discover this together. You know, I've been on this journey for a long time. I've had really good teachers who've pushed me very hard. I spent a lot of time here in isolation on this mountaintop to look into these things, to push myself, right? And I think when we start understanding there's something more than what we think about who we are, and we welcome that in heart resonance, I think this is what the next evolution step should be for humans.
Yeah. And I think I'm listening to you there, and I realize that AI is giving us that mirror. It's saying, you know what's the point of the intellect? It's been supplanted. You know, you can do it better with a machine. So what's left in us? What's left in us? What do we have that's different? What's our untapped resource? What do we look at? And it's exactly the kind of things that we're talking about, you know. And AI gives us that mirror to look at, to say, hey, you know what have you got? Dig deep, you know.
Yeah, it is. And everything's a reflection of everything, right? I mean, it's a big fractal. So we could look at the world changing in terrible ways, or we can look at the world changing in ways that are getting us to return back to center, return back to a true heart-centered groundedness. And then all of a sudden we realize we have more abilities, more capabilities when we tap into our intuitive mind.
Yeah.
And this is really the magic and the joy of this process, because we're on a spiritual journey, right? We are infinite consciousness knowing itself through our human experience. So you have to ask yourself, what do you want to do with this human experience, right? Don't you ask yourself sometimes, why am I here? You know,
that's one of the best questions to ask yourself.
I ask it all the time.
Yeah.
But I ask it more like a koan, you know. I don't ask it like I'm waiting for an answer from somebody. I'm asking it so I can listen to my asking and then say, I don't need an answer. I just need to be present with this asking, being present with being a channel to this infinite consciousness that we're immersed in, because that's where the answers come in. That's where the insights come in. This is where the healing comes in. And I think we're all concerned at one level or another with some aspect of change in our life. This is natural. To deny that is to deny your humanness. To acknowledge it is to open yourself up to the potential of what it really means to be human. So thank you, Nilash. Thanks for having time to talk about this. And thank you for opening up the community in Trinidad so we can have another beautiful experience together. And I look forward to seeing my friends that I met on the last trip and to new people who are open to come. And I can assure anybody who is considering coming that you will be around such a beautiful group of people who are caring, open, really safe place to explore. And that's my big joy of coming to Trinidad. So thank you.
And we have some fantastic locations. So one of the courses is going to be here at Ishtara Center, at our center. And we always try to create a very buoyant energy here. which you experienced when you came.
Yes.
And we're going to be nestled in the northern range in the mountains, just on the feet of these ancient mountains, at the Colibri Center there. Wayne Hutchison, a good friend of mine. And that is a lovely location for the EMF course. I think
really
it's
excited.
yeah. We can spend a lot of time indoors. We have a pyramidal structure, space, sheltered space, and then there's all the greenery and all the mountains around us.
Good. Yeah. So I think it all contributes to a really beautiful opportunity to do a deep dive in 3 days, and 4 if you come to the fundamentals class, Qigong fundamentals. But to be with good people, to be with like-minded people is healing all by itself. And to do it in a great environment, and to be able to look at these tools in really practical ways for our mind, body, and spirit, I think it's great. So again, thank you. And I so look forward to February and to being together.
Thank you. Can't wait for it. Great.
Thanks, Nilesh.
Thanks, Francesco.
Peace.